Valkyries. These mythical creatures have been captivating our imaginations for centuries. Yet, surprisingly, there's a scarcity of information about them. You might be acquainted with these figures in modern pop culture, such as in the Thor movies, and in video games like God of War. Despite being an iconic element of Norse mythology, references to them in Norse texts such as the Prose Edda, Poetic Edda, and other Norse poems are quite sparse. In this video, I've compiled all the available data on Valkyries to explore their origins, significance, and why Vikings hope to encounter them in the afterlife. If you stick around till the end, I'll also reveal a groundbreaking hypothesis about the Valkyries' origins, based on recent archaeological findings in the ancient Norse world. Valkyries wielded immense power and were revered, but despite their importance, they were not deities. They were mortal women. It's unclear whether Odin selected these women in their youth, or if they were destined for this role from birth. These warrior women served as Odin's handmaidens, with their primary duty being to select the finest warriors for the ultimate battle. At the end of days, Thor. The etymology of the name stems from the ancient Norse term Valkyrja, derived from Valr, meaning those who fall in battle, and Kyrja, meaning chooser, thus, chooser of the slain. Valkyries would ride across the battlefield, their armor gleaming, their presence both inspiring and terrifying, choosing the bravest fallen warriors and taking their souls to Valhalla, Odin's hall, where they would prepare for Ragnarok. In Valhalla, these warriors would train and feast until the day of the final battle. However, it's noteworthy that the goddess of war, love, desire, and beauty, Freya, literally meaning lady, had the first pick of the fallen warriors and joined them in her hall, Folkvanger. There's a misconception that Freya, because of this privilege, somehow led the Valkyries. But that's not the case. The Valkyries served Odin. No one really knows why Freya had the first choice. Some speculate it might be part of an arranged marriage between her father and Odin. There's a strong connection between the Valkyries and Odin, the god of war and death. Odin relied on the Valkyries to bring him the strongest and bravest warriors to bolster his forces for Ragnarok. In return, the Valkyries were granted the power to decide life and death, a responsibility they did not take lightly. Much like Hermes in Greek mythology and Anubis in Egyptian mythology, the Valkyries also served as psychopomps, guiding the souls of the deceased to the afterlife. This role was crucial in the Norse belief system, as it ensured that the souls of fallen warriors would reach Valhalla safely with their four abilities and mystical powers. In some tales, Valkyries could sway the tides of war in favor of the Vikings, and they could even shapeshift into various birds, further showcasing their mystical abilities. Valkyries were also known for communicating with birds. They often conversed with Odin's ravens, Hugin and Munin, to relay vital information to the Allfather. There are various depictions of Valkyrie weaponry and armor. Their weapon of choice was the spear, and their armor, often referred to as swan skins or feathered cloaks, resembled bird feathers with wings attached to the back. In addition to selecting which warriors they brought to Valhalla, Valkyries also played a role in determining the outcome of battles before they even began. The poem Darasekra tells of a man who has a vision of 12 women working on a loom in front of a stone hut. The loom is made from entrails, arrows, spears, and 7 heads to weave the fates of men in battle, as well as their duties on the battlefield. Valkyries also cared for the chosen warriors, serving meat to the Einarjar, the fallen heroes in Valhalla, helping to heal their wounds from the day's training. Valkyries have been captivating the human imagination for centuries, and their presence in popular culture is a testament to their enduring legacy. One of the most famous depictions of Valkyries in literature is in Richard Wagner's opera cycle Der Ring des Nibelungen. In this epic tale, Valkyries are portrayed as powerful and fierce warriors who serve Odin and carry out his will. The famous Ride of the Valkyries is a musical representation of their mythic majesty and has become one of the most recognizable pieces of classical music worldwide. Valkyries have also featured in various films and TV shows, further cementing their place in popular culture, from the Marvel Cinematic Universe portrayed by Tessa Thompson to the anime series Valkyrie Drive, Valkyries continue to inspire creators and symbolize strength and power for audiences around the world. One of the most famous Valkyrie stories is that of Brynhildr and Prince Agnar in the Volsunga saga. Brynhildr's tale is one of love, betrayal, and tragedy. She was originally a human, the beautiful daughter of King Budli, before being chosen by Odin to become one of his Valkyries. One day, while Brynhildr and her sisters were bathing in a pool, they left their swan garments on the bank to keep them dry. Prince Agnar, who had been hiding nearby, seized the opportunity to steal the swan garments, leaving the young Valkyries stranded with him for years. In the following years, Brynhildr's relationship with Agnar evolved. Initially, Brynhildr might have felt resentment and anger towards Agnar for stealing her swan garment. But as time passed, their dynamic began to shift. Whether it was a spell, genuine affection, or a bit of Stockholm Syndrome, Brynhildr ultimately made a solemn vow to Agnar. And with that, Agnar returned Brynhildr her swan garment, restoring all her powers. This played to Agnar's advantage when he fought against King Gunnar of the Goths. Agnar was seen as the underdog and unlikely to win, but Brynhildr's persuasion shifted the tide of the battle, leading to Agnar's victory. But Odin, who favored King Gunnar, realized what Brynhildr had done. He was furious, and Odin punished Brynhildr by stripping her of her Valkyrie status and powers, condemning her to a mortal life. She was placed in a castle, surrounded by a wall of fire, and put under a sleeping spell that could only be broken by a hero brave enough to cross the flames. Siegfried, also known as the Dragon Slayer, bravely passed through the flames and fell in love with Brynhildr. However, he left her to run an errand in Burgundy, where he encountered a sorceress who wanted Siegfried to marry her daughter. The sorceress cast a spell on Siegfried, causing him to forget Brynhildr and agree to help her son, Gunnar, marry Brynhildr instead. Gunnar was too cowardly to pass through the wall of fire himself, so the sorceress did it in his place, disguised as Gunnar. Brynhildr, deceived by this ruse, married Gunnar. When Brynhildr discovered the truth, she was devastated and arranged for the sorceress to be murdered. Consumed by guilt and grief for having her murdered, she then took her own life by throwing herself onto Siegfried's funeral pyre. There's a hypothesis that the concept of Valkyries originated from Norse shield maidens. Recent DNA evidence has shown that Norse women could also be found fighting on the battlefield, but these depictions usually portrayed women as low-skilled infantry, simply shadowing their male counterparts. But perhaps there's a different explanation for their origins, as presented in the captivating 2019 National Geographic documentary titled Viking Warrior Women. I was struck by the profound connection between the historical findings presented and the characteristics of the Valkyries. This groundbreaking documentary revealed that numerous Viking warrior burials previously thought to be male were actually female. These female warriors were often buried with a range of weapons, including arrows, indicating that they might have served as cavalry archers, skillfully riding horses and launching arrows at their adversaries. Curiously, the feathers used to fletch Viking arrows were sourced from eagles, geese, and swans. This link between birds and the weapons used by these warrior women immediately brought to mind the mythological Valkyries, often depicted with wings, symbolizing their ability to fly across realms. Furthermore, just like the real-life Viking warrior women, Valkyries are frequently portrayed riding on steeds. This remarkable parallel between historical evidence and mythology led me to a fascinating hypothesis. Could these Viking warrior women have been the inspiration for the myth of the Valkyries? The shared symbolism of birds and flight, along with the depiction of both groups as riders of steeds, suggests a potential connection between the real-life female warriors of the Viking Age and the legendary Valkyries of Norse mythology. This discovery sheds light on the possible roots of the Valkyrie myth, highlighting how it may have been grounded in the real practices and lives of ancient warrior women. Valkyries, with their rich history and powerful presence, continue to symbolize strength and mystery in Norse mythology and popular culture, especially in Scandinavian culture. Women had more rights than in many other societies of the time, and this respect for women is reflected in the reverence for Valkyries. They could own property, divorce their husbands, and often had a say in whom they married. Let's not forget the lesson. The Valkyries teach us about the strength and power of women in history and mythology.